Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I wanted to bring this article out because despite what you're hearing from some of the naysayers and the people that are on YouTube and on all these other social media sites saying that feminism is not a black woman's fight and black women don't get assaulted and black women shouldn't be feminist and black women shouldn't do this and black women shouldn't do that. That is old and dead, what they're saying. And that is coming from a time where black women are often silenced for speaking out on black women or black female issues. And so that is still going on. You have an older generation who still believes in black women being seen and not heard, and almost not seen at all. It's always black males voicing their opinions and their issues on everything straight across the board. And anywhere having to do with religion, politics, social issues, it's black male platform, black patriarchy, and black male point of view. And you never hear what women's stories are and their testimonies and their opinions are, unless they're women that stand behind a male to prop him up on his podium. And so you're going to have a lot of these people who they have a large following, but they're speaking in regard to religions who are oppressive of women and females. And so we do have that in the Black community. We have religions and organizations who view women as having a specific role to prop males up. And so that is not talked about. Hashtag me too. The legacy of black women. And so you're going to have groups on YouTube. The videos are to lure black ears to listen to their rants. And usually what it is to prop black males up, even if black males are not deserving to be propped up. Of people and their opinions, they only see things one way, and they don't give anybody else room to speak on issues. Those are the males that usually are propped up in a lot of these videos, and they've been accepting donations from people who are ignorant and unsuspecting of the movements that are on YouTube and on Instagram and Black Junction TV. And they're in it for the money only alone. And they use their basis as Hotep pro-Black, looking for Black leaders or looking for Black role models. But they do it in a way where they can legitimately say they didn't steal, you actively participate based on their opinion, and you were tickled in the ear, and then you gave of your money through donations, and they accepted it. And so now they're just good and clever at conning people out of their money. So we have a lot of that going on. So this article is talking about some of the testimonies, Black women's testimonies, the legacy of it. So 27 years after Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings, Anita Hill recalled that the most wrenching part of her testimony was not being asked by an all-white, all-male judiciary committee to repeat Thomas's graphic and grotesque comments. That is Thomas Clarence. And so, or Clarence Thomas, rather, who he is on the SCOTUS panel. He is a judge in the Justice Supreme Court. And so it was knowing that her elderly parents had to live through that whole ordeal too. So much of what we've seen with the Kavanaugh hearings and Christina Blasey Ford, is same thing happened some years back, but only the faces of these participants were Black. And it was Anita Hill and it was Clarence Thomas. And so going on with the article, Irma and Albert Hill were deeply religious people. They raised 13 children while working as farmers in Okmulgee County, Oklahoma, and taught them to be honest and truthful and hardworking. So Anita Hill explained in an interview in 2017. So Irma turned 80 on the day that the vote was taken to confirm Clarence Thomas. Looking back on the hearings, Hill said they felt that they couldn't protect me. It was hard for me to see that I couldn't protect them. So years ago, I was sexually assaulted. Afterward, I winced at the thought of telling my parents. And when I did tell them, they were loving and supportive, but they also wondered aloud how this could have happened to me. I was at a loss myself. I was supposed to be a source of pride to my parents. For the first time in my life, I felt that I was a source of shame. We don't talk about it anymore because there is nothing that can be said to make it less searing for any of us. I have a few memories of my immediate aftermath of the assaults. I pushed it out of my mind until a month later, when I was flying over the Atlantic Ocean to attend a conference. As I looked out of the window, the most unwanted and unwelcoming images visited me and then evaporated into the black sky. They were out of order, disconnected, and disgusting. A revolting feeling came over me, first in waves and then settled in my stomach. And so at the conference, I stumbled through my paper flubbing lines that I knew by heart. I called my therapist, who referred me to a psychologist who specialized in trauma, and I saw her the week that I returned, and I've seen her every week since. So she assured me that it was not my fault and that it was not uncommon to block out traumatic events. So during this time, I received tenure at Stanford. Okay, so this is Anita Hill. So I should have felt relieved and secured. Instead, I felt vulnerable and more anxious than ever. I retreated to the safety of my bedroom and slept at every chance I could get. Before, I was traveling almost every week. Now I was lost in a fog of exhaustion. I began to confide in friends and colleagues so that they would forgive my absences. A year passed, and I believed that finally I was beginning to heal. But one afternoon, as I drove to meet friends, I saw signs for the highway exit that reminded me of the event. Suddenly, the sickening feeling returned, and I had to pull over. At any moment, now that I knew, a sound, a touch, or even a highway sign could bring back those terrifying images. And eventually, I would have understand that this is how trauma manifests itself, episodically and fitfully. I would learn to live with unpredictability, but I still feel my left hand slowly clenching into a tight fist when I tell my story to others. I search their faces for signs of judgment or pity. As a historian, I understand the countless reasons why Black women, or why women, particularly African American women, might not share their experience of sexual violence. Long before the #MeToo moment, Black women weighed differently survival strategies, sometimes turning inward and choosing silence, sometimes turning outward and choosing protest in the aftermath of sexual assault. And so sexual exploitation has become a part of Black women's collective history and memory. For centuries, white men routinely harassed, abused, humiliated, and raped Black women, especially those who worked in white homes as domestic servants. As a result, the historian Darlene Clark Hine has written Black women develop a different culture of dissemblance that created the appearance of openness and disclosure, but actually shielded the truth of their inner lives and selves from the oppressors. So there was no room for a Black woman on a white woman's pedestal, regardless of class and status, refinement, or educational attainments. But Black women could elevate themselves, they hoped, by avoiding any expression of sexuality, and Black communities rewarded them with esteem and recognition if they met these moralizing demands. The politics of respectability, a term coined by the historian Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, confined Black women to a strict code of conduct and proper behavior. At times, it meant policing one's desires and diminishing one's self in order to be accepted and acceptable by the white middle class standard. But in most cases, it did not work. Black women continued to be questioned, degraded, and violated. And it still happens to this day, believe it or not, despite the powerful imperatives to keep quiet. Courageous Black women stepped forward and bore witness to their experiences. In 1861, Harriet Jacobs appealed to the Northern white women to believe her when, in her autobiography, Incidences of in the Life of a Slave Girl, she recounted the sexual violence that she experienced at the hands of her master. Testifying before a joint congressional committee in 1871, Harriet Simmeril named the 3 members of the KKK who raped her after her husband voted for a radical Republican ticket in Columbia, South Carolina. So both Reese Taylor, a 24-year-old wife, mother, and sharecropper who was gang raped by 7 white men in 1944 in Abbeville, Alabama, and Betty Jean Owens, a college student at Florida A&M University, who was gang raped by 4 white men in 1959 in Tallahassee, drew traditions of resistance and protest to testify against their attackers. So in 1965, the Democratic National Convention, Fannie Lou Hamer, a civil rights activist and sharecropper from Ruleville, Mississippi, described the sexual violence that she endured after she was arrested for sitting in the whites-only section of the lunch counter at a bus station in Winona, Mississippi. "I question America," Hamer declared in a television session as she challenged the legitimacy of Mississippi's all-white delegation. President Lyndon Johnson, that is, recognized how gripping Hamer's testimony was to a national audience and delivered a press conference that interrupted it before it could air in its entirety. So in 1991, Anita Hill, as what was reluctant to testify against Clarence Thomas. As one of Hill's friends later explained, "You don't walk around carrying your burdens so that everyone can see them. You're supposed to carry that burden and try to make the best of it." But when the Judiciary Committee asked Hill to give an account of her experience, she said, "I felt that I had to tell the truth. I could not keep silent any longer." So yet the committee failed to call on the qualified experts or to show curiosity about why the effects of sexual harassment persist long after the incident. They made racist and sexist assumptions. Years later, in an interview, Hill asked a simple question: "What if the Senate had actually taken me seriously?" Today, the tradition of testimony carried out through intimate and public conversations and swelling protests around the country is changing how sexual violence is understood in this country. So many thousands of women have emboldened one another by telling stories of sexual harassment and assault. Last month, Christine Blasey Ford gave credible and compelling testimony that Justice Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her when they were in high school, and Kavanaugh denied the allegations. Callers swamped C-SPAN phone lines to tell their own stories in solidarity with Ford. A 76-year-old woman from Missouri who had been assaulted when she was in second grade said, "You get confused and you don't understand it, but you never forget what happened to you." This is the most promising development of #MeToo. Accounts of sexual assault once considered unspeakable are spoken every day. Yet, despite the enduring legacy of testimony by Black women, white women have often played the protagonist in history of sexual violence, and Black women have been relegated to the supporting cast. Harriet Jacobs, Reese Taylor, Fannie Lou Hamer, and countless others who took great risks and made great sacrifices, making it possible for more women to tell their stories, but many of us do not know even their names. Why? I can tell you why, because they're Black females. We can create a more inclusive narrative, as the legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw recently urged. Black feminist framework have been doing the hard work of building the social justice movement that race only or gender only frames cannot. So to do better by all women, we must listen and recognize the historical and contemporary circumstance that shape their experiences and have real consequences on their lives. The historian Elsa Barclay Brown has written, "We have still to recognize that being a woman is in fact not extractable from the context in which one is a woman, that is race, class, time, and place. Every trauma and every testimony has a history. Before we can heal, we have to share those histories and learn and honor them as well." So this is Allison Hobbs, is an associate professor of American history and the director of African and African American studies at Stanford University, and the author of A Chosen Exile, A History of Racial Passing in American Life. Okay, so I found this article to be pretty relevant as to what has gone on recently, and to pretty much give you a little tidbit of a background that Black women also are affected very much so by sexual assault. But we're told many times to be silent and to not mention it and to support Black males, no matter what, even the males who are not deserving of support. And that is the ones who are violent, they're vicious, and they won't support their children, and they don't support Black women. And so we have a lot of that going on in this time. It's been going on, but it's even more so now. And so I just thought this was an important article to bring out, that we do suffer in silence a lot of times as Black females. We're told to not speak on it, to just be seen and not be heard. So with that being said, this is a little bit of the personal background and history of what some Black women have experienced in this country. And even till this day, still, we're told to be silent and to not be really heard, just to speak in reference on race issues and to support Black males no matter what, even the Black males that are not really ones that are supportive of Black females, that don't support Black females, that don't look to Black females as being credible, and that don't show respect to Black females. And so with that being said, this is Antoinette 70, Thanks for listening.